Hello, and welcome to Rave Sensation. I'm your host, Dan. This episode is going to focus on comics I picked up at the Small Press Expo in Bethesda, Maryland in 2022. If you haven't ever checked out the Small Press Expo and you're in the area, you should definitely try to attend. It's a great show to see. I've gone many years. But I hadn't gone in a few years. COVID put a little stop to it for a short time, too. It's a great show, and I had no money, but I really wanted to go, and I could only afford a couple things. So it's not a big haul, I'm not one of those people who walked away with a big bag full of stuff. I wish I could have, but one year I met Ben Mara, the artist behind the great One Man War on Terror comic, which is like one of my favorite comics in the last decade, easily, if not longer. I bumped into Ben there, and I had a great conversation with him, and it really helped spark a renewed interest in comics, because I'd gotten kind of lukewarm there for a while. I wasn't seeing as much that I really felt great about. There was things coming out that I liked and I read, but Ben and my interest in his comics got me to check out some things. Through looking up him online, I was able to find out about the Power Comics YouTube channel, which was great, and I also found out about the Cartoonist Kayfabe channel, which I've ended up enjoying a lot. So anyway, thanks to Ben, I really, I was going like, maybe lightning will strike twice and I'll bump into something else that'll light that kind of fire. I didn't really see that this time, but I did find some good stuff. I was walking by one table and I saw this art, and I saw this what looked like an obvious homage to Dick Briefer's Frankenstein comics from the Golden Age, and the art, and I don't mean to be disrespectful to the artist, but kind of looked a little like Gary Panter's work, where it's very messy kind of artwork, and there's a lot of lines that seem to be lines for line's sakes, and the colors kind of, so it's interesting. There's other people who've done things that are similar, and I'm just like, so what? But I really like this stuff, and like I said, it's he's got on the cover here, it says reprinting a Dick Briefer classic. It's not reprinting. It's it's totally redrawn and rewritten. So, but I recognized the artwork then, and I was like, oh, is it because I just saw somebody else doing it? It was in another comic that I again had bought because of Ben Mara, All Time Comics, and sure enough, this turned out to be the same artist that was in that, and this artist's name is Josh Baer, and I really thought that his was some of the best stuff in the All Time Comics, which All Time Comics is being reprinted now, I think, by Floating World, a publisher I'll talk about a little bit more in just a bit. So I don't know if this is to everybody's liking, but I enjoy this kind of look. I enjoyed this. I think it's a lot of fun. The other thing it kind of reminds me of is I really like this woman who does manga, and her latest comic, Die Dark, has a lot of kind of funny horror elements and stuff. And this kind of reminds me of that a little too. So there's that. It's called Black Star, and I didn't realize that at the time, but this is actually from 2019, so it wasn't new to that show. This is a funny comic that I got. This fellow Graham Miller, I actually talked to him a little bit, and it's probably because of my talking to him that I picked it up, because it's a fun little thing, but I wouldn't necessarily bought it. It's called the Iron Whaler, and what it was he was creating daily strips to promote his friend's short movie, it's a weird little, it's done like a old daily strip, adventure strip, and it's fun. It's not fantastic. I can see how doing this as a live action short, like he's planned to do, I can imagine it being like a parody of, a cross between the old time adventure serials, and there was a live action kids show when I was growing up called Diver Dan, which had ridiculously poor underwater effects and little marionette puppet fishes and stuff that would Diver Dan would have to battle against, including a evil barracuda. This kind of reminds me of that. It's fun. It's a fun little thing. Like I said, I'll have to check and see if the film has been released yet. Then, speaking of Floating World comics, this is a comic that they had put out, Night Hunters, and it's got the color scheme here is kind of like this basic thing that I see a lot of people experimenting, working with, again, a lot of independent artists, and I see it a lot. I can't always tell you why exactly I prefer two very similar things, one over the other, but I do like this one more than a lot of the dystopian future kind of things, and the things that have this kind of color layout to it. I like the paper this is printed on too. Floating World is a great publisher. I've quickly become a big fan of their stuff. Like I said, it's nothing new really. It's dystopian future kind of thing, but I just I like the art. I like the color. The story is basic, but I'm enjoying it. There's only 3 issues of it, or at least of this first story. I don't know if they're going to do more or not. But it's a lot of fun. I like this one a lot. Glad I picked it up. Speaking of Floating World, this comic wasn't out when I went there, but I cannot pass up any opportunity to talk about this. Go to the Floating World website and order Earthman right away. It is, as I mentioned earlier, thanks to Ben Mara, I discovered the YouTube channel Power Comics, and this is one of the comics they talked about on there. Power Comics are independently produced comics, and they kind of fall in the same category as Outlaw Comics. The main difference is that they kind of tend to focus on the ones who are just a little bit off center. So they're more personal, very personal. That has to be one of the things. But also, this is much more amateur. It wouldn't, a lot of the independents, a lot of the Outlaw Comics, without much tweaking, might have made it, to a regular publisher. This probably wouldn't. It's a great, funny, and great comic. Like I said, Floating World. They're the ones who did the Night Hunters and that one. The final thing I'm going to talk about is this book, A Little After Now, the comic book genius of John Jacobs. This was actually a little thing. I was at the Ad House Books table, And Ad House Books is a great publisher. They're kind of closing up shop this year. They're selling off the remaining stuff they have, and I'm not sure what the Chris Pitzer, who ran out Ad House Books, was there, and it turns out he's a big fan of John Jacobs, who I'm also a fan of. And John Jacobs, also his books are pretty much power comics. And what Chris has done is he scoured the internet and found out everything he could about John Jacobs and his great comics. And Dr. Peculiar is my favorite, and there were 2 issues of that. Actually, I have the Fire Frontier too, and I have the Power Stars comics, and I have Black Atlas. Now, these comics here are ones that he wrote that were, he worked with some other people who were a little more savvy than him, and they made some books that apparently are more commercial seeming. I have not seen any of these later ones. Supposedly they're easier to find than other ones, but I haven't run across them. But anyway, like I said, Chris found out everything he could, which wasn't much, and wrote this up. What I'd like is for someone who's reprinting the Power Comics to reprint John Jacobs books. Now, Ken Landgraf, whenever I bring up these books, everyone goes, "Oh, Ken Landgraf." Now, I like Ken Landgraf, and, I collect his comics too, but I would like people to remember that John Jacobs' writing is part of what makes these so great. They're really a lot of fun. They've got a crazy point of view, and they're just terrific comics. So anyway, I picked this up. I'm not going to keep talking about this since it's, I can go on and on about the John Jacobs stuff. But anyway, you might be able to, through the Ad House Books website, you might be able to still get a copy of this, and you can read all about this. I was a big fan. I remember when they came out. I wrote about John Jacobs comics for a music fanzine I was working for, and I did a little correspondence with John. And of course, when Chris found this out, he goes, "Oh, where are the letters? Where are they?" And it's like, no, they're long gone. I don't know. And they weren't really too much in the way of letters. He was promoting his comics, and I was just asking some various questions about how people could order them. And at the time, he was running a contest for, you could you could draw a monster, send it in, and if he picked it, he might use that monster in a future issue of Dr. Peculiar. Of course, that would have been the 3rd issue, and the 3rd issue never came out, so darn it. Anyway, there you go, folks. That was Small Press Expo 2022 for me. If any of you guys picked up something from the Small Press Expo in 2020, feel free to let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear about anything you scored. And I am crossing my fingers that I will be in a better financial situation this year, and I'll be able to go to the Small Press Expo and support more independent artists. All right, thanks very much.